finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Hey. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of BS Free MD, where it's not always BS free, but we try to keep it that way mostly, with Tim and May Hindmarsh. And if you were on or listening to our podcast last month, we've started a new thing monthly where we join our friend Rick Dancer from Get Real with Rick Dancer. He hops on the podcast and is with us for the first little bit, and he gets to share some of this fun and talk on his show as well. So we have him joining us as well as our guest today, Martha Rosenberg. And a little teaser for what we're talking about. We're going to talk about direct-to-consumer advertising as well as
direct-to-consumer pharma advertising,
there you go.
Not potato chip advertising, which was also coincidentally direct-to-consumer.
There you go. So Martha's joining us. She is I believe, full-time writer for the Epoch Times and has been covering pharmaceutical advertising for a long time. It'll be fun to talk to her about how she got into that, and we'll uncover all the dirty little secrets behind it. We've done this before. I can't remember what episode. I'll look it up. Where we did an episode called Funny Farm, and Tim and I had a Docktails with Cocktails episode, and pretty much made fun of the ridiculousness on TV that we see and all the fine print underneath. But today, to get serious and get real, we have Rick Dancer from Get Real with Rick Dancer and Martha Rosenberg. So welcome to the show. It's so fun to do these.
I love this. It's like my doctor friends are here, and then I get to meet Martha and talk about one of my favorite conversations, Big Pharma.
Exactly. And
Yes.
it's fun because you get to be the guest instead of the host, right, Rick? And
I know I have no responsibility. I can make fun of you guys, and you can. The good thing for you is you can just shut me down too. You can just pull me out. All of a sudden, Rick's getting boring. Out he goes.
Cussing like a sailor gets ejected. Actually, you wouldn't get ejected from this show for that, but that, you never know.
I'm the BS part of the free MD.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, how long have you had your show?
Our show?
Yeah, you may.
Yeah,
right.
we're going on 3 years.
yeah, this is our third
Oh, that's
year.
excellent.
Yeah.
So
How long you've had your show, Rick?
Gosh, probably 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Before that,
Oh
was
my
a TV
gosh,
show.
you guys are
Yeah,
established.
we've been around, and then I met them during COVID, or what I like to call the dark
Oh,
time. And
yeah.
they would come on my show, and the first time I had them on, they pulled me. YouTube shut down the show; they wouldn't let it go out. And I'm like, it was my first experience, and I'm like, thanks, Tim and May. And now I don't care. So now I put them out there, but they were my first expulsion and entry into Facebook jail. Thank you so much, Tim and May.
Well, if you're gonna get banned or expelled, it'll be because you're partying with us. What's
I
that?
think we said the word vaccine or ivermectin or something.
Yeah, it was a bad thing. It was a really bad.
It was
thing.
some unbelievably terrible thing.
Yeah.
So anyways, Martha, tell us a little bit about your history and how you worked in advertising and when you started to get the light bulb coming on that this sort of pharma advertising stuff was not all that it appeared to be.
Oh, I love to talk about this, Tim. So I live in Chicago. We have a lot of ad agencies, and my background is copywriter, creative director, ad agency is my background. And so I was working at a ad agency that just did pharmaceutical, okay? And I was pretty naive at that point. This might be 20 years ago. And my instructions as a copywriter were to convince people with diabetes to go from a pill to an injection. And I don't know much about, I'm no doctor, but I asked my supervisor, why are we telling them this? And she said, oh, we make more money. And that was sort of like the light bulb went off on my head at that point. That the profit motive is the only thing behind the drugs is the profit, whether it's appropriate for the patient, how it's packaged, all that stuff. And I could see that firsthand But what really radicalized me, Tim and May and Rick, was actually Vioxx. Because I was always a reporter, but I wasn't a pharma reporter. And I'm asking myself, how could so many people have been duped? We know they hit some of the studies, but I think 50, if memory serves, I think 50,000 people had heart attacks.
Yeah. So why don't we tell Rick and his audience and ours about Vioxx for those that don't remember? It was an anti-inflammatory drug similar to Celebrex that was proposed to be great, especially for orthopedic type pain. That's mostly
well, its selling feature. Its selling feature was that it was a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, so you could get arthritis treatment, etc., without the stomach ulcer issues that aspirin and ibuprofen can cause. So it was so heavily marketed. I remember back in the the late 90s, we would get these medical education, like it was education, like stuff we're paying for, and they were saying
like lunch and learn,
like lunch and learn, and they were so convinced that the COX-2 inhibitors, which were Vioxx and Celebrex, were going to be so good that if you didn't prescribe them, you would get sued for prescribing naproxen, because you would be causing all of these ulcers when there was an other alternative. And here Vioxx comes out, and it didn't cause ulcers, it caused heart attacks, and it killed 30 or 35,000 people before it was yes. Mm-hmm. And it was made, it was a Pfizer drug. It was one of the biggest, it was until the British petroleum spill in the Gulf of Mexico. It was the single biggest criminal penalty ever paid for by an American company.
Gosh, is that right? I was down there.
I think most people don't. I didn't know that. I mean, unless you were on the drug or had someone affected by that, and maybe we're paying more attention since COVID to things like that.
Well, Rick, I maintain a list of all withdrawn drugs, okay? Because faith in the FDA is iffy, okay? And
so those two F words don't go together, faith and FDA.
What I see happening a lot, and I'd like Tim and May to weigh in on this, is I see a lot of drugs pulled after they go off patent. And then they're like, oh yeah, well, we're sorry, actually our drug cause, like statin might be one example. Okay, all the mental effects of the statin were not revealed until it went off patent. Okay, so you see that a lot. With Vioxx or any of the popular drugs, they're not going to admit to anything. They'll say, they being drug makers, we didn't know, our post-marketing surveillance didn't, but they do know. They do know.
Yeah. So I'd like to back up to I'm thinking when we were in residency, where we did our training, we had a couple mentors and supervisors that really instilled in us. I think anyone that went through our program, but I know it's not universal, but they're old school. And they said, so there's a new drug on the market. I'm thinking they grew up in the times of thalidomide, because that's what stuck with them. But it's like, so it's a new drug. So they have these studies that aren't very long, and they're small amounts of people. The data is not really good. Don't jump on the bandwagon of a new drug until it's proven itself. And sometimes that's past the patent running out after 5 years.
No. Or patents don't run out in 5 years in pharmaceuticals. They're 10 or 20 years.
I think some of them initially was 5.
I don't think so.
I'm probably wrong, but I remember both of us, even, when we trained, it was like, so a new drug would come out. It was all the she fancy thing. The pharmaceutical reps would come around, and everyone, it's like, oh, this is the new greatest thing. And we kind of were like, let's wait and see. Unless it was some life-changing, life-saving experimental thing, or it was a new chemo drug and someone had no other option, we really didn't jump on the bandwagon of a lot of these new drugs because we were taught that way. I know all the thalidomide story. I was almost a thalidomide baby. My mom opted out of it. She was presented with thalidomide to take for an anti-nausea medication when she was pregnant with me. And so, but I'm from Canada. A lot of people say, well, you can't, that's impossible. It wasn't in the US, but we're from Canada. I know
What does that do to you, May? I don't
Uh,
know.
Pocomelia,
so
which
it's-
sounds like a really cool punk band from England, but Pocomelia or Focomelia is where you have basically no arms or no legs,
that's the
or little stumps, like little, just like legs like me.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Tim and May, but it feels to me like some countries allowed it. I mean, we know that our Francis in FDA stopped it, but I think it was used elsewhere.
It was big in Britain and
Very big.
Canada being a Commonwealth country. I think some of it came over that way. So that kind of stuff stuck in our heads. I think our mentors, but so when we started practicing in family practice, we were would sit back. Not that we would never try a new drug, but very cautiously, because of these, it's like you don't know what's going to happen and what are the long-term effects going to be. So I remember a lot of these very vividly that got yanked off, Vioxx being one of the
Fen
beginning ones.
Oh, Fen for sure.
Fen for weight loss.
They even took Darvon off recently.
Mm-hmm.
Darvon, for heaven's sake, how many people took that? And I mean, I don't have my list in front of me. Some of them, people wouldn't recognize them. But there was one, what was it, Trovan? It was an antibiotic that we felt it was okay to use it on little kids in Africa, okay? And then they pulled it from the market altogether. There was a big lawsuit about that.
So do they go out and, they're so into advertising drugs and what they can do. I was a reporter. I mean, I don't remember ever reporting or talking about drugs taken off the market. It's almost like you guys know because you're in the business, but I think for the general public, unless you were using those, we probably have no idea how many drugs that we used to hear commercials for or hear, people talking about are no longer available. And it's like, we probably need to know that so that we start going, well, wait a minute, here's 100 drugs, I'm guessing, pulled off the market in 3 years. And we keep hearing new ones going out there and we never, you know what I mean? You don't think that they're not safe.
You can look it up. You can look up drugs recalled or discontinued due to adverse effects. There's even immunization.
Why shouldn't the drug companies have to tell, if they push out there what they can allegedly do for me, if they pull them off the market, why don't they have to go out and tell people, hey, by the way, we made a big, huge honking mistake and 50,000 people died of heart attacks because of this drug. You may not want,
Well, Rick, I mean, you've given us a perfect lead into advertising. It's because their main revenue comes from drug makers. They're never going to say 5,000 people died of a brain hemorrhage from a drug that we advertise. They're never going to. That's their revenue. And that's why you're never going to get rid of direct-to-consumer drug advertising, because it not only works for pharma because they don't need reps anymore. They've turned patients into reps, but the news media, that is absolutely their biggest revenue stream.
Right.
Oh, so they're getting paid for that. So why would they take it? I mean, I hear them all the time on Spotify, Pandora, and they target my age guys. It's all prostate cancer, erectile dysfunction, all that kind of stuff. They're hitting you with all these different things.
So we did a show on, when we did the direct-to-consumer advertising episode, I can't remember if we touched on it before, making fun of commercials. Most people don't realize, if you live in the U.S., that this is a phenomenon unique to the U.S. as well as New Zealand. Nowhere else in the world can you advertise directly to the patient, like on television, in a magazine. The government and regulatory bodies there have said no. They can talk to the physicians or the medical establishment, and they can make a decision what's right for their patient, but you can't just put it out there to the public and then they go, oh, I like the sounds of that drug, I'm going to go shopping for this drug via my doctor. And it's so subliminal, Rick. I think Tim wants to show us something really unique.
Do you want to,
for this clip?
I think this is a perfect segue for this
subliminal,
clip.
Subliminal. Okay. I can't even say subliminal. You don't realize how often it is out there. Watch this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because they pay for that. The news comes to us from drug makers.
Oh my God. And then you have to wonder why people didn't understand during the dark time when the Pfizer vaccine was coming out and all the TV say nobody talked bad about it, did they?
Look at this.
No, it's outrageous. And I want to remind all of you that before the vaccines, Pfizer was guilty of Neurontin. There was a big gabapentin Neurontin settlement. They absorbed Wyeth and all the hormone settlements. I mean, they have a long track record of things like they now have. I mean, they have. I mean, it's really a rap sheet. They have a rap sheet.
When did it become legal for drug companies to advertise on television, magazines, radio, internet so far?
In 1999.
It was even before that. I believe
a little bit, but not.
So
not
that was in print ads first.
But the TV stuff was
the
99.
TV stuff is correct.
Okay, so here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but the thing that's crazy about this is when I first saw this ad, and I want to give full disclosure, I got it off of Rumble. It's from the Canadian COVID Coalition. They are brilliant, very brave people. But Pfizer isn't advertising a drug. Like they're just saying their company. Right. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they own the narrative. They own the newsroom. That is entirely the case. It became obvious during COVID that was the case. But when you see all this together, like that's 55 seconds of continuous news shows bought by a single drug entity. I mean,
when I was in the, and that's paying their bills. When I was in the television industry, like we could hardly touch a car company. Like any of the car companies, those were our biggest advertisers. And if there was a story that went against a car, a local dealer or something, our sales room would be in there with their heads up your behinds, watching you and going, because this was their bread and butter. And so I don't understand why people can't use common sense and some critical thinking skills and say to themselves, if these companies have bought and sold ABC, CNN, and all that, why am I not hearing any alternate information about the vaccine, the virus, the mask, and so on? To me, that's just pure ignorance.
It's right. It's so obvious. Like, short anecdote for you. I went out to West Virginia to interview some veterans who had died after Iraq and Afghanistan. And this particular couple was convinced that he had died of a heart attack from, am I allowed to mention a drug?
You can mention whatever you want to, and you can use it with cuss words. We don't care. So
okay,
whatever flavor you like.
As long as they make us tingle.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was they called them atypical antipsychotics, which would be Abilify and Seroquel and Zyprexa and Geodon. And this was Seroquel, okay? And it was made by AstraZeneca. And I went out there and I really interfaced with a lot of families whose loved ones had died, okay, on drug cocktails. And so anyway, this particular couple whose son had died of what they felt was, I think it was a heart anomaly. They went all the way to Washington, D.C. They went to all the congressional offices. They're like, this drug is killing our troops. And finally, FDA adds in their label heart condition, and they never ever advertise. Like Rick said, they're not going to put on TV. Oh, by the way, Seroquel now, will harm your heart. Oops. It was buried. They release stuff like that, like at midnight on a Sunday night or a Friday night, and it gets buried. You never hear the negative drug news.
They have Biden do it, because then you can't understand what it means. So here's something to throw into this conversation, because you brought up the politics. During the COVID thing, I was going through and I went on Orstar, which is a financial reporting thing for the state of Oregon. You have to, everything, who gives money to who. At least, I'm going to be just safe and say 90%, but I bet it's more, of every legislator in Oregon state legislature, Senate and House district, got at least $1,000 from Pfizer. The governor got more, like triple that. Incoming governor got more, just about the same as she did. I mean, it is, and then you sit and look and say, you're demanding that I use this vaccine from these companies that are giving you money. People need to wake up and look at that and say, could there possibly be a conflict of interest when you're getting money from the very company that we're shutting down the state for?
Well,
right, and I was going to say, Martha, I heard you when you were talking to Robert Yoho, if you don't mind elaborating on
sure.
how about the CDC has these
Oh,
nonprofits that they
Oh
set
yeah,
up
Rick,
with
this
the
will
same
blow your.
thing.
This
I
will.
know who Robert is too. So because my
Yeah.
audience probably doesn't know who this is.
This will
Okay.
blow your mind. Yeah. So we have a mutual friend that's been on our show
Dr. Robert Yoho.
3 or 4 times, Dr. Robert Yoho.
And he has a podcast on his Substack. And Martha was on there, and it's a spectacular episode.
But talk to us about how drug companies buy off nonprofits. This is delicious.
What?
Yes.
Well, okay. So the CDC thing that May is referring to, I didn't even know this myself until fairly recently, but there's what they call a CDC foundation, where many, many corporations just enrich them, okay? And not just drug makers, but also like Coca-Cola, okay? Or let's say high fructose corn syrup, processed food people. And the idea is that they're giving all their money to CDC, and then but through a nonprofit, okay? It's a nonprofit foundation. And I think the CDC's policies are reflected by that, a huge amount of money. When you look at the donors, you don't even want to ever listen to the CDC again for that. And of course, we know FDA has very thin firewalls, if any firewalls. I think you might have heard on my podcast with Dr. Yoho that our current director of FDA has 51 financial links to drug makers, 51. Now, why does that happen?
Right. And like, so we all know how bad corn syrup is I mean, it's like, you might as well just, put yourself in a noose. And so then it's no wonder that during the dark time, nobody talked about how to get healthy and diet and do the things that could really help you save your life. And instead we just promoted drugs and masks, like Band-Aids, that weren't going to help anything. But now, so if you follow the money, it really always does lead to the truth, doesn't it, Martha?
Well, it doesn't. I believe that Big Food and Big Pharma are very much working together, because as long as Big Food gets people fat, right? And then they've got the diabetes, the hypertension, they're not, and then here comes Big Pharma. Oh, we'll help you take this drug,
Yeah, no, it's but now what about all these foundations, right? Like what about the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, et cetera, American Cancer Society? Like, these are all essentially owned by pharma companies, are they not?
You're absolutely right. I wrote about that recently for Epoch Times. And some of them, of course, you reach out for their comment, and some of them didn't even respond to our questions. One that always sticks in my mind is the American Heart Association has what they call heart check, like a permission, like a logo they'll put on a food, and the food maker will pay them for it. And then it's like, oh, this is heart. Yeah, this is heart healthy. And they're like outrageous foods.
Cheerios. Oh yeah, I think
like every single breakfast
Cheerios,
cereal should
or a bunch
be
of breakfast
like
cereals.
None of them should exist, right? I mean, it literally.
Not even Captain Crunch?
No, not even Captain Crunch.
I thought it had peanut butter in it, so it was protein.
Yeah,
there you go.
No.
Didn't Rogan do a show on that where he found the ones that were supposed to be ranked the healthiest, and it was ridiculous. Frosted Flakes was ahead of.
They literally did a South
vegetables
Park. They did a South Park where they the FDA was trying to come up with a new to promote the food pyramid. And the food pyramid literally is insane. It is upside down. Like, it has all these grains and all these carbs on the bottom, and then like never red meat and all this. Well, Cartman gets visited by Aunt Jemima in a dream, and Aunt Jemima tells him it's upside down. Turn it upside down. So then he goes to the FDA and tells them that they need to invert the food pyramid. So then everyone starts eating like tons of meat and they get super healthy. Like, it was just genius.
No, and the Diabetes Association. I know quite a few people who have the condition, or their kids have the condition, and they've said, I didn't even say this, but they said, why would this influential agency not be agitating for lower prices? The insulin has become so prohibitively expensive. Wouldn't that be their job if they're actually advocating for their patients?
You would think. But that's what your purpose would be.
But insulin is a completely insane, like that is a completely insane, crazy market. Because if you use beef pork insulin, like the ancient stuff, essentially what Banting and Best pulled out of a slaughterhouse in 1920 in, Ontario, it's very, very inexpensive. But what happened is they genetically engineered insulin. That was probably the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. It went on the market, I think, about 1992, 93, around when we graduated from medical school. So now you had to have human insulin that was genetically engineered. And then you had to have ultra long acting human insulin. And then you had to have ultra short acting human insulin. And they came up with these entire ways to treat type 2 diabetics who are metabolically disordered and almost universally morbidly obese. Okay. So we started treating people that you could treat with a keto diet and a walk with thousands of dollars of insulin. Like literally, the price of insulin went from almost being free when you use the animal-based insulins to the human genetic engineered insulins that were designer insulins, which became the standard of care for about the last 25 years. And the price exploded. Like, I think, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's orders of magnitude. Like, it's not like it was 10 times more expensive. It was like 20 or 30 or 40 times more.
It's just shameless. I did not know that, Tim. That's shameless.
So you guys, how do my viewers, how do people that aren't, I mean, you're doctors, and Martha, you're an expert in research this kind of stuff. How does your average person, you counterbalance this? How do that without, I mean, honestly, you guys, whenever I do a show with you, it kind of scares the hell out of me. It's like, I'm going, oh my gosh, I want to go check my drug list, which I don't take very many.
Good.
My drug of choice is called a GYM. And that's where I go to get my adrenaline fix.
Good. Me too. I run a mile and a half every day.
Good.
Yeah. And no offense, Tim, but I am vegan.
Yeah. Well,
that would be a fun episode.
We don't.
Oh yeah.
We make no judgment. We have interviewed carnivores. We have interviewed vegetarians.
Vegans.
We've had people completely revolutionize their health from both sides.
That's the fun part.
The carnivore
of the
side and the vegan side. So none of this is offensive.
But Martha, remember that's why Tim is so full of bull.
Yes.
But getting back, you asked a good question, Rick, about the tuning out. Now, my partner, my other half, watches a lot of sports, and they do have the drug ads on the sports, well, everywhere. It's on TV. And he seems to tune them out. But a lot of people do not tune them out. They offend me. I don't watch TV. Yeah. But what I was really intrigued with is the string of side effects that you've mentioned, Rick, about like brain bleeds, hair loss, esophageal cancer. I always want to know, why would that not unsell the drug? How could that possibly not unsell whatever they're saying? They've got the puppies, the rainbows, and they're telling you you'll not, And it turns out, I don't know if anybody remembers, there used to be a book called Hidden Persuaders, and it was about liquor ads. And in the ice cubes, it was a print ads, they would have a skull, and for some odd reason, it sold the liquor. Okay, so I kind of was wondering, could these side effects perversely sell the drug? And I did some research, and they do. And what happens is people get in a hypnotic state, and they kind of it helps sell the drug. They've actually done research in it. Part of it is because if you say pain at the injection site, and then you say seizure, the first one will kind of temper the second side effect. So putting them together dilutes them. But also there's a hypnotic state they actually fall into that it somehow sells the drug. And they,
oh my God.
I know. I was shocked that this was a study they did in England at a business school. I can send it to you guys.
Because my wife, I would love that. My wife, because we were sitting there the other day, you hear, here, you can deal with this illness, or you can have bloody diarrhea, your lungs will fall out, your eyeballs will sink to the back of your head, that kind of stuff. And you think, and then she said to me, and I said to her, who would ever do it after that? And you're saying that's actually, so is it a certain mentality, or is it trusting people, or are there people like me who trust absolutely no one but God?
Yeah, I trust God.
Yeah, but is that what is there? That would be an interesting thing to see. Is during COVID, I think they figured out really quickly, fear-based people, they're gonna jump right on this stuff, because
if you guys read Epoch Times, I did an article on this, so it's in there. But the actual hypnotic state that this puts people into, I forget the name of it. It's not actually hypnotic. There's a name for it, but it sells the drug, and I couldn't.
Wow.
Now the FDA has mandated that you have to list the things, but so they have to do it. But it doesn't unsell the drug. It actually helps.
So then you wonder if the government, if the drug companies went to the government and said, we want to list these things because this is going to help. You know what I mean? That's how, I'm sorry, that's how my mind works. You know, I mean, don't tell me that every man who listens to the Viagra commercial hears there's a possibility he can have a 4-hour erection. Is not going, hey, I'm going to try this stuff.
Tim's the person, we make fun of this, but we will, the sports is on in our house all the time.
Guilty.
Yeah. Or HGTV when I can steal the remote. But sport, the show's on, and we will be watching it. And they're so fast, these people that speak, because you can't speed it up legally. Right. And they have to say all the side effects, and they throw it in there. And you're right. They intersperse the milds with the severe. And it's to that hypnotic kind of rhythm.
I freeze the TV.
He freezes the TV, and we read them as physicians. We were like, okay, so what are these side effects? And you see, it's like, may cause necrotizing fasciitis of the perineum.
And then it explains the perineum. It says the perineum is the area between your anus and your genitals.
That's going to become necrotic, right?
Yeah, and you can get a
diabetic medication that can do this.
Yeah, Jardiance. You can get a flesh-eating bacterial infection of your taint.
But yet the patients will come in and I want Jardiance because it works great and helps me lose weight. And I'm like, but
it doesn't help you lose. It helps you lose weight if you get if you get a taintectomy and they have to cut part of your rear off. Then yes, you would lose weight.
Are you talking about that diabetes drug they're using for diet?
Yeah, Ozempic. That's a peptide.
Or Wegovy.
Yeah,
same category.
Yeah, there's two or three in the peptide group that help people lose weight. Jardiance is not one of them. Jardiance makes you pee sugar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But,
you guys,
but still, we will stop.
Me.
We'll stop the TV and watch it. Back to your, initial question, I guess, Rick, about what do lay people do when they see all this stuff? I think, I would say now that we have the access of the internet to look things up, where you can research side effects. You can look up anything. I mean, you can become a brain surgeon online, pretty much. I can look up things about topics I don't know, but yet you have to realize that they're selling to you. You're the market, and so there's an agenda, and it's all about them making money. It's not about your health. They don't care about your health and your best interests.
Yeah, but you know who's supposed to be the gatekeeper of that? The physician.
Exactly.
And they're freaking robot, mindless robot people now. I saw a patient in an urgent care, and I literally I totaled up their medications. Okay. So this is a person who's a type 2 diabetic. Okay. Right. So ketogenic diet, vegan diet, a walk is really the treatment. Okay. And I'm not really exaggerating that.
You mean like a exercise walk?
Exercise.
Oh, I thought you meant a cooking walk.
That's what I thought he meant the first time.
Okay. Sorry. So anyways, it's
the English language for you, right?
Yeah. So because we conquered all these other countries and adopted their stuff. So we have WALK and WOK.
Martha and I think vegetables. You don't.
Yeah, I don't. Vegetables are kind of but that's beside the point. So at any rate, I totaled up this guy's medications, and I looked through his chart, and he was on $1,800 worth of diabetic medications and cardiac medications for cholesterol, etc. $1,800 a month. All right. So then I went and I looked at his labs, and his diabetic control was horrific. Like, it was terrible.
So it's not even working.
And so I literally said to myself under my breath, who's the idiot that prescribed all this? Because that's what I'm thinking, because I'm an arrogant a-hole. So I go into the chart and I look at it, and it wasn't, a primary care doctor or a junior physician or physician assistant that maybe should know better. It was the endocrinologist. The specialist in diabetes. I'm like, the guy's already on insulin. He doesn't need any of this other crap. He just needs insulin or a total lifestyle over. And the patient is sitting there, nice guy. He has no idea what's going on because he goes in, he gets seen for 5 minutes, and he just gets another whatever drug. And as long as the insurance company pays for it, he doesn't care.
No, you're absolutely right. And it gets especially bad with seniors. As people get older, they put them on the poly drugs, polypharmacy. And these poor seniors they don't know what they're on or why they're taking it. And then some of the side effects make them look demented when they may not even be demented.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
No, I have a
I would boggle my mind for a while when I was younger and more jaded and harsh. But people would come in and I'd say, okay, because many drugs have multi-uses in medicine, we cross-use them for various things. And so I would say, well, you're on this beta blocker, for instance, atenolol, and it can be used for migraine prevention or for blood pressure or your heart disease. So I would say, why are you taking this one? I don't know. And well, why are you taking this drug? But I don't know. And so they might have a mitt full of 10 drugs or more. And most of the time, even basic ones that most people would know. Yeah, I don't know. My doctor says I should. And I would think, well, you put all this chemical in your body, you don't know what it's for, and you trust that. But B, the combination of all these pills together is like mixing bleach and vinegar and baking soda to me.
The combination is unknowable.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you don't know. It's unknowable. No one can know how it's going to work. And what drives me absolutely freaking out of my mind is I have nonagenarians that I've seen in urgent care
Define that
in their 90s. People in their 90s on cholesterol pills. And I say to them, ma'am, you are as sharp as a tack. I hope I get to live as long and as healthy as you. Why are you on cholesterol pills? What are you trying to prevent? And she says, my doctor gives them to me, so I take them. I said, you need to take exactly 2 things. You're 93, you win. You've won at life. You need to take 2 things, whiskey and cigarettes. That's it.
But, you guys, when you mentioned the, going to your doctor, asking your doctor, what they've basically done with the DTC drug advertising is they've not just convinced the patient to ask for a specific drug, they've also made him self-diagnose.
Yes.
And he's like, hey, doc, I have this and I need this. Well, what medical school did you go to,
Right. Well, I remember people coming in, they would use acronyms and abbreviations, things that I didn't even know because we never used them in medical school. And when RLS came out, I'm like, RLS? I mean, there's ALS. What's RLS?
Oh, restless leg syndrome. It's something somebody made up. You have the leg fidgets and you need a $200 a month prescription that has a bunch of neurological side effects because you didn't do enough exercise and you have the leg fidgets. When honest to God, when I first heard that, it was when we moved to the United States and one of my senior partners said, yeah, I'm going to treat this lady for restless leg syndrome. And I said, you made that shit up. Like that. That's not an actual thing.
And they like the letters. They like the letters like this exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, EPI. Once you give it a cute name like EPI, everyone's going to say, well, I have it or I might have it. And then they have symptom checkers, which is just, it should be illegal. Okay, because it's selling disease. Okay, well, I feel fine, but the symptom checker says that I have this,
So,
and
in your research, Martha, does that sell more drugs? Is there a direct correlation with the patient coming into the physician than to prescribing the drug for that? Do you know?
Well, I haven't literally seen that, but we know there's a lot of online advertising. Okay, and so what they want to do, they being the drug makers, is get you to their site. And then the site segues into symptom checker. And I have this?
And mental health. So why don't you elaborate on that? Especially mental health is the big one, right? Talking about mental health and anxiety and what used to be, I'm not saying it's healthy, but back in the day, my grandparents' generation were a little older. They were from the Spanish flu epidemic, or the flu. Kids died. Dad was gone working. They buried a baby after it was born. They grieved, went back to work. There was no Prozac and there was no taking multiple clonazepam. Oh, they probably had some
Jack Daniels.
Yeah, I know.
That was the counseling service.
A few other things.
But
now we've medicalized everything.
Oh, you're
Oh,
right. You're right, May. And they also medicalize grief. You know, if your loved one dies, that's not a mental illness. That's life, right?
right.
And you
No,
don't need a darn pill for that.
No.
So you guys, you should talk more about that, and my viewers can come over to where, tell them how to find you so they can hear the rest of this podcast and find out more. I'd love to stick around, but part of what we're trying to do is get people to go to your site and listen to you guys as well. So I should bow out and then I'll go listen. Martha, it's absolutely a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
No, I love what you're talking about, and giving people the information they need to make better choices, because what people need to realize is we're all being sold something, whether it's politics, drugs, bad food, and it all goes back to common sense. It's like, find out the way that other people eat, look for a plan. It's always about moderation. And if people would do that, they wouldn't have to have medical bills that are
right. And my last piece of advice is only buy drugs from somebody that's selling them out of the back of a van.
Oh my God, May. I don't know how you live with this man. All right. So you guys, what are you going to talk about in the rest of the show? And then.
Thank you.
Well, I want to dive deeper into the medicalization of the mental health, but also what we've done with COVID and vaccines and Martha's experience in that. And am I missing anything? Anything else?
I don't think so. But I mean, we could do 4 hours on this, because I have been calling bullshit on this for
Good for you.
half of my career. I sat on medical and therapeutics committee for a medium-sized hospital system that had insurance companies. And just one thing before you leave, it's fascinating. The number one most expensive class of medications for our insurance companies when we were writing our formulary was multiple sclerosis drugs.
Oh my goodness.
Because they were all used off-label. Because what happens is the drug companies can get orphan drug status, where they get patent protection that goes on almost for infinity.
Forever.
If they have a drug that only treats something like 100, it has to be really rare, like 150,000 or something in the United States have the disease. If you get a patentable drug that treats that, you get orphan drug status. Look that one up, Rick. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is they'll get orphan drug status for a subtype of multiple sclerosis. And then they go to the neurologist and they say, well, it works for this subtype. And they know the neurologist is going to prescribe it for all types of multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
So they can jack the price up and extend the patent, knowing that I can prescribe a medication for anything because it's my license on the line, not the drug companies.
So now you guys already know I have trust issues, and there's no, I'm sure there's a drug for that, but it'll cause bloody diarrhea and and
you're really afraid of that bloody diarrhea.
And I'm I hate bloody diarrhea. And then I'm a journalist by heart. So now you have just made me want to go out, and I'm probably going to get myself in more trouble. I'll probably get kicked off Facebook again. And there's no drug for that either.
It's really great to meet you. I'm going to follow you.
Okay, Martha. Yeah. And for all the other people on BS Free MD, Tim and May and I, we all do all this stuff together. So come over and find ours. We do interviews with people, life. But most of the time we're kind of like Tim and May, and we get in a lot of trouble. But I don't even have a medical degree to get in trouble. I'm just some old journalist who comes on and asks really hard, really good questions, I think.
That's what we love about your show is, you cover all topics, all fun human interest stories, but you're not afraid to just tell it like it is, let people share, and it's honest and raw, and we love it. And that's why that's why we're partnering with you.
Yeah, I've had to become that because I can't be ruled by stupidity and ignorance. It doesn't work for me. So
I'll go look up discontinued drugs and immunizations
and orphan drug law. That's crazy stuff right there.
All right.
Yes. Thank
Martha,
you.
thank you. Very nice meeting you.
Oh, same here. Great.
All right. See you guys later.
Yeah.
Bye, Rick. Well, now that Rick's going to zoom off of here, we'll finish our discussion.
Yes. Sure.
I'm trying to think, what was I going to say? In your research, have you done much writing on the immunizations and the side effects, especially not just the COVID, but even going back with the other drugs. I'm thinking of
What are you thinking of? Gardasil?
Gardasil and the rotavirus.
Oh, well, rotavirus
right.
rotavirus got pulled.
Right, that's what I
They
mean.
actually pulled it.
Well, I'll tell you this, May, is I haven't written a lot about COVID and vaccines because that's sort of the third rail for a reporter, okay?
Mhm.
But I will tell you this is back when the swine flu was that 2009?
Yep.
Okay. And I was working with a group of doctors, and they all, and I had no real strong opinion. I never had kids, so I didn't have to look at the MMR, you know. And these doctors said, don't take that flu vaccine. Don't take it. And it kind of opened my eyes, okay, to like, what do they know that I don't know, okay? And then soon after that, they began with this Gardasil. And, you know, that they said they sell it in the third world where you don't even have drinking water you can drink, okay? Like, it's not a major threat to your life compared with malaria or dung fever or, you know, river blindness. But the Gardasil, I don't know if you remember this, you guys, but Rick Perry, who was the governor of Texas,
Mm-hmm.
his chief of staff went to work for Merck, whereupon Rick mandated that the whole state, all the girls in the state under 12 had to get it, okay? Because his chief of staff worked for Merck. Now, I don't know if that went through or not because I don't live in Texas, but that's what we're talking about, okay? Let's inoculate everybody. Let's you know, it's
I think I hear that it was supposed to be happening in Oregon where they're trying to mandate the vaccine in Oregon, or am I wrong?
Well,
I have no idea.
Something tells me that's what I heard, but that's just hearsay, so don't take my word for it.
well,
but I, you know, all honesty, and we tell the truth. I mean, we were all on board the COVID vaccine at the beginning because it seemed like a good technology. And we've been duped all along our career, even with our cautious attitude. You know, we look at the research and we're like, well, this sounds good. I mean, there's great technology, there's great medications. I take some crazy stuff for my migraines for prevention. It's changed my life. I should have been disabled basically but because of them, but now it's totally changed my life. It is a game changer. So there's some things that are great, yes. But we've also fallen to the trap of the Gardasil, for instance. I'm like, well, this is good. Why wouldn't you want to prevent cancer in your children, especially your daughters, if this is going to prevent cervical cancer?
Yeah, but it's still a lifestyle vaccine, which drives me absolutely crazy.
But at the time, we thought if it was a choice for that person, and they thought they were, you know, they were in a situation where their 14 or 16-year-old might be having sex, getting pregnant, high risk behaviors with multiple partners that put you at higher risk for cervical cancer. Maybe it's a good choice. And so I would say at that time, yeah, it sounds good. Until then we start to see time go on. Side effects, things start to happen from this. In our own community, there was 2 girls who it was within a couple of days after receiving it. They went together to the local community clinic. So it goes because they didn't want their moms to know that they were getting this, and they were in junior high. And they went to the community clinic because they thought it would protect them from having cervical cancer, potentially if they were sexually active. And both of them ended up in a tertiary university hospital, one in a coma for I forget how long. The other one, I think both of them were, and then one is paralyzed. So,
oh my goodness.
You hear these things. I remember years ago, we would hear stuff. Let's talk about going back to even autism from vaccines. You know, someone would come in, or the Jenny McCarthy stories where, they took their kid in, they got the vaccine at 18 months. And then 2 days later, the child is speechless, nonverbal, banging their head on the wall. And I remember back years ago when it was rare thinking, no way, it has to be coincidental. They're just equating two things that happen at the same time and causation with the wrong thing. But now that we're having the numbers of autism has just exploded.
Right. But let me,
you've got to start to wonder.
You have to wonder. You have to wonder. There's no question. And the one that really gets me is these stories where you talk to honest to God, real people. And it's like, my child was toilet trained, was walking, was talking, and then became nonverbal
Right.
all of a sudden. That's something happened. That's obviously an environmental something or an infection or something.
Well, that's it.
But the other side of this is there's been an industrialization of autism as well, because what happens is you get these kids that are difficult to deal with in school. And I started to find all that when I was a primary care doctor. I'd get all these pieces of paper. Does this child have a neurological or a perception disorder? And if they did, if you branded them with something like ADD or, spectrum disorder or whatever,
get more funding.
then they get more funding for the kid and they get an aid. So we kind of changed, just like in diabetes. It used to be you had to have a fasting blood sugar of over 160 to be a diabetic. Well, now it's 126. So we say that there's an explosion of diabetics. Well, there is, that's true, but there's also we changed the definition. So, autism, when we graduated from medical school, was profoundly disabled nonverbal children that were often very difficult to manage from a behavioral perspective. Now you can be on American Idol and you're on the spectrum. And I'm kind of like that there's a part of that just kind of doesn't seem right to me.
Well, and Tim, don't you think that this also goes with this whole victimatology thing where everybody wants to be a victim and have, I've got this, I've got that?
Right, because you're special. If you have a story, you stand out, it gets you attention, and you have to be marketable. I mean, look at Instagram. Why do people blow up? They all want to be, what's the word?
Unusual?
No, I'm thinking
victims.
Or make their money with their story. But yeah, unless you have a story, I have a friend whose child auditioned for American Idol, and it was like they just had to have a backstory to make it interesting, or they wouldn't really show you. So everybody needs to have a special story,
right? They want
to feel included, and that's part of it. I know it would drive our son crazy at school because he's like, "This is no fair. How can I be in the same class with someone who gets the same 4-point grade as me, yet he's labeled autistic and gets to do an extra 60 minutes on a test because he's got this label?" So,
well, and Tim, you're talking about the anecdotal, or when you meet the person. I have a clinician friend. She's not a doctor, but she's a clinician, and her little son, after his vaccine, and this was before COVID. This was the MMR, right? He never made eye contact again. He cried for 24 hours. He's been institutionalized for 20 years. Okay. He wears the helmet for the epilepsy. And she says, Merck killed my son. That's what she says.
Well, how do you not believe that? I mean, that's that was, that was the stuff that used to be how we were guided as clinicians. We saw things with our own eyes. We believed them and we asked questions. Okay. And then now we do what we're told largely. And unfortunately, we're seeing, we have a local medical school out here. It's a private osteopathy school. And so May was going to be
a standardized patient. I was going to
So she's like, play. In my semi-retirement, I'll just go do the role play, and it pays not great, but it's kind of fun, and I can help educate.
It's about having fun and giving back to the community. And I'm like, what an easier job for a doctor to do than pretend to be the patient.
Until they said, and this was literally 2 weeks ago, when you have contact with patients, with the students, you have to wear an N95 mask. And you're sitting there going, okay, this is who's educating medical students.
Oh my goodness.
So they're it's literally what Malcolm Muggeridge said, where we have educated people unto imbecility. They're so educated that they can't think for themselves, and common sense is gone, and you are now an imbecile. And that's really literally the case. We have been I'm more nervous. I have heard more common sense, decision-making, forward-thinking thought from my truck driving and logging patients than I have from virtually anybody from any of these institutions.
Especially, Tim, when they're not TV watchers. The advice I give everybody is just don't watch TV, and you'll be healthy. You won't know how sick you are. But no, I agree with you. I think we've been, and a lot of it is the trust in the news media, which I don't trust them. But a lot of it is because of the trust that they have been they've lost their critical reasoning skills from the television, and the trust in these. It's unbelievable. Some of the things people believe now.
If you watch, my opinion is that real journalists and reporters aren't on television. They do separate work like you're doing, because we see those montages all the time they put together in Canada, where they basically show clips from small town reporters to then the medium sized networks and the big low, Fox, CBS, pick your station. And they're reading like a teleprompter of exactly the same talking point over and over, whether it's a political thing or a medical story. Nobody, I don't know who feeds them this stuff, but it's just one person writing the news that goes out to every network across the country. Like, this isn't news.
No, it's changed immensely. And it's, I would have told Rick, if he were still here, that there are some sites that I do trust. Okay. And I'll just share them with you guys because this is good to know. There's a website called Ask a Patient. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. And she's my friend. She's a librarian. And all it is the patients rate a medication. There's no drug maker input, no advertising whatsoever. And you will see, maybe there's, let's say, 500 people in the last 10, 15 years have taken a certain drug. And many of them will say, well, my hair fell out. It's not on the label. So who are you going to listen to? The drug maker or the patients who took it, And you can put your own experience with the drug. Some people will say it worked, but a lot of them will say, this is poison, don't take it. And I believe in the patients. Okay, so it's called askapatient.com. It's a very, very good site. I also go to Public Citizen. They have a book called Worst Pills. Okay, and I believe in them. And I also believe in. Have you ever heard of the People's Pharmacy?
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay, so it's a man like you guys, a man and a wife, a married couple, and they operate the People's Pharmacy, and they'll tell you maybe there's a non-drug solution for that, And so they have a podcast, that they have a newspaper column, and I've followed them. So those are 3 sites that I recommend.
Okay. What about, the other one? I don't know what you think of this, but the not VAERS, but the is it?
Oh yeah,
is it FAERS? The FDA adverse event reporting. That actually is, you have to really hunt. But I was having problems with one of the medications I was taking, and I'm like, this got to be I think it's causing this problem. I have a lot of medical knowledge, but I had asked 4 specialists that I'm in contact with, whether, my neurologist, if this drug could be causing this problem. My medicine that I use for my migraines, I also have Raynaud's, and it seemed to be causing ischemia to one of my toes. So I said, could this be causing a problem? Well, the neurologist hadn't heard of it. Then I had my dermatologist friend take a look at my skin. She was the most helpful. The vascular surgeon I was referred to, he hadn't heard of this. So I ended up doing my own homework, thinking there's a correlation. But on the FDA site, you can look up, you can type in your drug, and then you can type in possible side effects or find out side effects, and you can wean it down to what's going on and see what people have reported, how many people have reported it. So you can kind of do your own homework that way as well. I'll look it up and link it on our podcast information. But I was blown away. I'm like, wow, there's been, 8 people in the last year that have reported this, 2 which lost their toe. I mean, that's information you think you would want to know. Right.
Very useful. I'm familiar with Raynaud's, but and of course, also, I'm sure that you guys look at PubMed.
Yes.
And what I do, I'll Google, or I'll search for a drug and a side effect, and it's amazing how many papers will tell you that they're not funded by the drug makers, but they'll write it, maybe they had a patient or something, but yeah, the like you said, the VAERS system, the FDA system. I know people who work there. They're not all evil, but the system, is
right. And you could self-report. So on that FDA adverse event, you can, as a patient, go in there and say, I took X medication and then I got this happen, and you could report it. So it goes in the database and keeps adding up so that they will know if it's actually statistically significant. But I remember I was going to ask you, What is now? I can't remember what I heard when you were on Robert's podcast talking about organizations that are set up so they're not actual patient reporting side effects from drugs, but it was like a cherry picked group of people.
Oh yeah, where they have
where
the
they
where
set
they
up.
have the advertising patients, where they do the testimonial stuff, just like your
Well,
Yeah.
they're, in my humble opinion, they're pharma front groups. They're
Right,
patient
that's what
front groups. And I'm not saying,
and I'd never heard of that before.
oh, it's the worst, if I'm allowed to mention it, would be NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. They single-handedly have conveyed a lie to the whole nation that 1 out of 4 people has mental illness. Bull. And what they're, I called them on behalf of a friend years ago, and I said, this friend, she has a daughter who has a borderline. Okay. And they said, well, if there's no drug to treat it, we're not interested in helping her. Okay. So they're absolutely a pharma sales agent. And now here at Northwestern, I live on the Northwestern campus. There was a suicide. You're going to see that with the young people, and immediately here comes Active Minds, which is another pharma front, I think. I can't prove it. And they immediately pounced on Northwestern, and they said that this student had stigma and barriers to treatment, the implication being that she didn't take, he or she, SSRIs. I would happen to say probably did take SSRIs, okay? But nonetheless, they had very fancy T-shirts that said Active Minds, and they said they had an office in the student union. I went there. The student union had never heard of them. Okay, they were just a pharma front, capitalizing on a suicide to sell drugs. So a lot of these patients, I know there's some diseases that really do need more attention. Okay, I focus on the mental ones, the psychiatric, and I think it's just criminal to convince people that maybe they're just living life and they're maybe not depressed. To convince them that you need a drug, and then these patient groups, these front groups, they will go to the state formularies, and they'll say you need to cover this drug on behalf of pharma. Okay, and what I've read, and I believe it's true, is that a human face, the human sufferer of the disease, sells more than like the drug rep would. I mean, it's the heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
But
and so.
No, so
You're
so
right, you're
so are you familiar with the single greatest pharma front group in the history of the world, which is the federal government? So in day-to-day practice in the United States, and it's part of the reason why physicians are fleeing primary care like rats from a sinking ship, is we get paid based on certain metrics. So blood pressure control, hemoglobin A1C control, etc. But what happens is we also get paid to screen every single patient we see that has not been seen for 6 months for alcohol abuse and depression. And we actually get paid for the screening. So the patient fills out their little symptom score checklist, and then they go and we look at it, and we note it in the chart that they were screened for depression. And then it's like, well, your score is kind of bad.
Right on this.
And then what happens? They leave with an SSRI.
So now, not everywhere. Okay.
But how much increase in SSRI treatment by the government paying us to screen every single patient?
So this happens everywhere. Like, I'm going to jump in and just say, last week I was at an orthopedic specialist. It was in my hip. I'm on to part number 2 here, as people have been following my story, my elbow. So I go in, establish care. The first questions on the tablet that they give me, are you depressed? How have you been feeling? And then it jumps into the alcohol screening. And I looked at the receptionist. I said, I'm here for my elbow to see the orthopedist. Why is it asking if I'm depressed? Alcohol, maybe, because if he's going to put me to sleep for anesthesia, but come on. It was all about smoking, alcohol, depression. I don't think the seatbelt one was in there, but I got so mad. I looked at Tim and I almost didn't finish it. I was like, this is bullshit. And it's the first thing on there.
Well, and like Tim is saying, that's the ultimate front group is our tax dollars, the federal government. It's inexcusable. I've seen it myself. When you go there for, like you say, something very clear cut, like maybe an elbow, And then you'll see that sign of pain. How bad is your pain? The pain thing. And I didn't know. I really did not know physicians were paid to do that. I know I've been screened. Have you lost your joy of living? Do you? I mean, that depression screening.
So the sad part is, and we've talked about this before, the people that really should be doing that and having that one-on-one would be your doctor that you sit down in the office and have that rapport with, because you open up to them, and that's the time when they can really like actually uncover what's going on. But no, it doesn't happen that way. It's at the receptionist at the front where you tick the little boxes, or it might be the MA that's checking your blood pressure. And then she goes through the questions and you're like, I don't want to tell you about what just happened in my life where
Thank you.
my boyfriend cheated on me and all this unraveled, because she's just going to say, oh, okay, well, talk to the doctor about it when he comes in. So you're more likely to just blow it off. It's
No,
done.
you're absolutely
Totally,
right.
yeah,
And the other thing is so many real life experiences like family problems, job problems, right? They want to call it depression. That's not depression. That's life,
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Well, no one can be,
Nobody
no one
wants to
can
do
be
life.
weird, and nobody can be sad.
Yeah.
We have,
Yeah.
you gotta get a label, and it's just like, and I'm like, that just drives. If I had a kid that was profoundly, disabled from something like autism, and the guy on American Idol is telling me he's on the spectrum, it would make me even more angry than I already am. I'm like, come on, man, like, really? Yeah, you're just a weirdo. Like,
But and you know what else? I think that you might have joined the medical profession after this happened, but I'm older, and I can remember when you would be given something for anxiety or sleep, PRN as needed, right?
Yes.
And now it's like, well, you have general anxiety disorder, you have major depression, so they're gonna, for one incident, they're gonna keep you on a drug indefinitely.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's like, don't trust the patient to take it as needed. That's what we're told. You just need to put them on this regimen and have them come in every 30 days. And I know it's ridiculous.
I had a colleague, I looked through, he was older. I looked through all his pills, and I don't know half of them, but I do know an antibiotic. I said, why have you been on an antibiotic for a year? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, let's get C. diff, right?
yeah, right.
Wow. So tell us what you're, if you can, working on currently or in the near future that's kind of piquing your interest.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit, I don't know how much more time we have.
As much time as you
Take as
want.
much time as you
Oh,
want.
really? Actually, sweet. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the clinical trials, because we referred to that earlier, that these drugs hit the market before, with a very small, and so I do get whistleblowers that approach me, because I'll say irreverent things. And I had a whistleblower, I think he was in Arizona, and he had a PI, investigator, who was looking at asthma meds, and he was being paid, of course, to check. And he would go out into the parking lot and recruit people in their cars. Would you like to be part of a drug test? Okay, so the clinical trials are a whole different topic. Okay, what I'm working on now is related. Okay, which has to do with the rights and safety of human subjects. Okay, and there's not a lot. I mean, I think you might know this, but your CROs and your IRBs will they need people, right? And they'll like go to a homeless shelter and say, how would you like to test a drug for us? So I'm working now on like protecting the rights of human subjects in clinical trials.
You think that history wouldn't repeat itself and people would know, but most people don't know what Tuskegee trials were. And then, so we talked about that. Peter McCullough, brought it up when we interviewed him. But you'd think that after COVID, where the whole world was a guinea pig, people's eyes would be open to like, oh no, this is an experiment. But it's still happening. And sadly, you're right. People in homeless shelters, do they bribe them? I mean, do they offer them money like you do if you donate blood? You get free cookies and a Coke.
When they came out with the first implantable birth control, the under the skin,
the implant on.
Or it might have even been before implant on. They went to India and just started slamming it in all these women with virtually no consent, because it's like, the Indian government's like, yeah, we got way too many people. Like, let's get this going. And I mean, it was.
I did a I did a mission trip to a country where they did that. It was like, these girls, we can't trust them, and so they just put IUDs in them. Now it wasn't like
No,
the girls
but
were fighting and weren't aware of what was happening, but it wasn't like a
no, but Africa
consent.
has been
There's no consent.
the entire at least the bottom half, the sub-Saharan part of Africa, has been the petri dish for so many drug trials that people don't even know happen, because they fail and they don't even make it to market, and they leave a wake of destruction in these small African countries.
Well, you raise a very important point, both of you, because not only are drugs tested there without their consent, and they believe it's healthcare, but secondly, of course, drugs are sold there. We know what happened with Gardasil in Japan. But thirdly, the drugs are made there. Okay, I mean, our drugs aren't manufactured here anymore, right? So there's a very strong third world component to all this stuff. And I've read really sad stories where these poor souls think they're getting medical care and they're actually testing a drug.
Yeah, well, back to the HIV treatment in Africa and what they did to the women there, and the trials on them. It's horrific what happened.
Well, that one antibiotic trial in Africa where they were treating meningitis, and they actually decreased the dose of the quote control drug. So to make the treatment drug look better. So they're increasing the risk of dying from meningitis because you're not even getting the control group's not even getting standard of care.
Have you read The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK?
I hate to say this, but it's on my nightstand, and I've only read like half of it.
That's why I do Audible for when I'm gardening or cleaning or whatever.
If it's on your nightstand, it's so big, make sure it doesn't fall on
your face. That's what's going to happen. It's going to flatten your nose when you're reading it and falls. But I do Audible for those kind of things because it's good for when I'm projecting. But there's a great section in there where they go into all the history of the HIV medications and the trials, as well as the MMR and how they have been using that in Africa. And that's all buying power and politicization with the government, because they come in and say, well, we'll provide these vaccines if you give us money, and it's all control. And
no, you guys know obviously a lot more than I do. What is the thinking behind giving a newborn baby a hepatitis B?
Well, there's only one reason. The reason is if the mother is hepatitis B positive and the baby gets vertically transmitted to the infant, they have a virtually 100% chance of getting chronic active hepatitis B if they get infected. I've had this discussion with patients like crazy recently, which is, you test the mother. So unless the mother magically got infected from the time in the 8 months or whatever, from the time you tested them at their first OB visit to when they delivered, why would you give the vaccine to 100% of babies? And the answer is, well, obviously it's because babies are doing IV drugs, getting tattooed, and going to brothels. That's the obvious answer.
See, that makes me so angry. And then, did you guys follow the Hep C marketing? This would be like, I'm going to say maybe a year and a half ago. Okay, maybe 2 years ago. They were really pushing here in Chicago on the billboards. Hepatitis C. You may be a baby boomer. You may feel fine, but you actually have. Okay. So and then after they began marketing, they discovered that it activated Hep B. If you had a pre-existing Hep B, they didn't know that when they marketed it, right? And they're like, oh, by the way, because they're so eager to please Wall Street,
Of course.
Right, and I mean that always. Those drugs always drove me crazy because they actually work. I mean, like drugs like Harvoni, if you have chronic active hepatitis C, we went from treating patients with medications that worked maybe half the time, gave you the flu for 6 months. Some people had to be treated for a year, depending on the subtype of hepatitis C that they had. Now it's pills, or it's an injection like once a week or whatever it is. But it's $75,000 a treatment. And it always, and again, this is the moral hazard, right? So virtually, not everybody, but virtually everybody, the vast majority, let's say it that way, of people with hepatitis C are people that share needles. They're IV drug abusers.
There's always the
So
exceptions, like
there's
the Naomi
exceptions.
Judd
Yeah,
type
there's
of thing. You're
absolutely
right.
exceptions.
But
You
for the most part,
but for the most
yeah.
part, that's who it is. So then you take somebody that's completely abused their health in one of the worst ways you possibly can, and our welfare health insurance in Oregon pays for the treatment.
Well, we do
So
it
you
for
get
smoking.
So you get a $75,000
give people-
treatment for wasting your youth.
We give people, think about it. They smoke. We treat their COPD, their emphysema. We tell them not to smoke, and they keep doing it. Then we pay for their inhalers, and then we pay for their steroids, and then we pay for their oxygen, and when we take care of them when they're in stages of life. I mean,
that's a really good point. Whatever happened to wellness? Like responsibility and wellness, like our friend was saying about GYM. Go to the gym.
Yeah,
well, you're right.
I always say if people had to pay like they did the way they drove their cars and had demerits, or their insurance prices went up because they didn't drive the speed limit, or they caused a car accident, or they got caught by the cops speeding too many times, then it's like your rates go up or you get your license taken away. Maybe health insurance should have some self-ownership as well. Maybe you could write on that.
I'll tell you what my girlfriend says. A lot of people don't agree with this, but I'll just tell you anyway. She, I guess years ago, some companies would not hire a smoker. Okay. Do you remember hearing about that?
Mm-hmm.
You can't work here if you're a smoker. And she said, why not? You can't work here if you're obese. What is the difference? You're not born obese. It's under your control. Your insurance rates go up. You're at risk of all these diseases, and it's under your control. What do you think about that?
I think there'd be nobody working in some offices we've been in.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously.
It's sad, and we laugh about it, but I'm like, what? This is like the worst.
And
advertisement for a health office.
Yeah, but it comes full circle back to the beginning of this medicalization of everything. If everything's medicalized and everybody's a victim, then that means that means that your crappy life has nothing to do with you. You're just a victim of your crappy life.
Right.
When in reality, you're a victim of your crappy decisions.
And I'm all for freedom of choice, and people, if they want to eat 10 Cheetos or 10 bags of Cheetos a day and drink whatever and do their high fructose corn, whatever your vice is, pick your thing. But when you're demanding that the rest of the world
pays
for it, then that's different.
But again, like it gets really, really crazy. Like you get into the stuff like PrEP. So PrEP is really being pushed, right? So PrEP is
define that for our
PrEP
listeners.
is medication that you take before you get HIV to prevent you from getting HIV.
Right.
Okay. So who does that affect? Okay. Well, it affects almost exclusively men who have sex with men, but it doesn't. If someone is a homosexual and has my exact lifestyle, where we have been 100% monogamous for 31 years, your risk of HIV is 0, because you have to be promiscuous to get a sexually transmitted disease. If you sleep with one person who has only slept with you, your risk of a sexually transmitted disease is 0. So the public trust pays so that people can be promiscuous.
Well, the public doesn't think sex is just for
no, I know, but the point
so
is,
it's all becomes a big moral argument.
And I had this argument. I had this discussion with a local politician here, and I just said I would pay for almost nothing in healthcare because most of it is a waste. But and I said, so I'm never going to get elected to any kind of health board because I'd be the guy. Don't pay for birth control pills because they're a recreational drug.
Well, you both have some very interesting thoughts. Have you written a book?
No, but we
have one in. We have one in.
This is why we just started the podcast. We have these discussions all the time at home, and finally, I'm like, why don't we just put this out there to the world? Because our friends come over and like, wow, you guys have some great stories, and we're kind of entertaining.
Do you have other medical people who are friends of yours who agree with you?
Locally?
A few.
Yes.
The people I work with, obviously we're not of one mind, which I would never want to be in a place where we're of one mind, but we have a lot of similar. COVID kind of ripped the Band-Aid off of the scab and showed people kind of what was going on. So, you know, the private clinic that I work in, you know, most of us are kind of, you know, leery of government regulation and this kind of stuff. Even though we take insurance, you know, we still have to play the game to a certain degree. And I understand that. I mean, it sucks, but that's life. And then we have other colleagues that are even more red pilled, shall we say, only do cash based business, get away from all the regulation that they can. So yes, there's other doctors that agree with us, but not that many.
But what I really like is that you guys have come up with the economic side of it, which I never really thought about that, like reinforcing bad health habits. I never really thought of it quite like you're saying, you know, because my big thing is food and drug safety. Okay, what they're not telling us, but yeah, and but I do get annoyed though at people who are, you know, I don't like obesity, okay, because it's under our control, and I get very annoyed at this whole like, well, I was born this way, accept me. No, you weren't born this way. If you're eating Cheerios, you know, and I think that we have to have more personal responsibility of everything, the drinking, the smoking, the food, you know.
Absolutely right.
But
I think that, on that note, I think that would be a great avenue for you to sort of make a list of topics to hit on next for your writing.
Well, like I said, I'm covering the human subjects.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to cover. You had a different name for it. I called it Wegovy, but I think it's that diabetes drug that's become a diet drug.
Yes.
And I'm trying to cover that because I don't know how you both feel about this, but I'm reading a lot of negative stuff. Okay. Yeah. And so I want to cover that. Of course, I've been covering psychiatric medicine for 20 years. I'm sick of it. Okay. I like to cover the invented diseases, the EPI, exocrine. Do you really need the TV to tell you if you have exocrine pancreatic insufficiency? You know, I mean,
no, heck no. In fact, I would, even as a physician, have to start looking it up in some of my medical books to piece together what symptoms that patient has, because no, so the patient shouldn't have to sit there and figure it out.
It's just that it's amazing. It's amazing that there's a market for any of this stuff. Like I sit there and I go, like the Peyronie's disease just blows my mind.
Oh, I know. It's to take the stigma away. One thing, and I don't know if either of you will agree with me on this, but I have a personal hatred of the biologics, and I think that the Humiras and the Remicides and and Enbrel, I think they've been way oversold. And I think that the ads are actually presenting them like a Clearasil, like you get clearer skin. No, in point of fact, you're lowering your immune system. The large molecules, which is the biologics from chimeras, like hamster human chimeras, they make 10 times what the small molecule drug makes. So that's why we're seeing all the injectables. And now they've trumped up, you know, you have RA, you have plaque psoriasis. I'm not saying they don't exist, okay, but they're not cancer. Okay. And I felt, and maybe I'm crazy, that a lot of this COVID spread from the lowered immune systems of all these people on the biologics. Humira is an evil drug. I mean, I know some people need it. Okay. But I happen to live near Abbott. And I remember when they spun off AbbVie to sell Humira, which is the best-selling drug in the nation. You can't tell me RA is the worst, the most prevalent disease in the nation, you know. So I have a real beef against the biologics, this whole movement toward syringes in biologics.
You're right. That is I think one of the biggest,
I'll be right back,
DTC marketing things that you see on TV. When we did our episode, Funny Farm, we called it, the data showed that was, I think, the biggest. They have the biologics was like the top number one out there, Humira being and Enbrel being the two. And you're right, they sell it like moderate to severe plaque psoriasis is this super common thing. And I'm like, heck no. How about like the number one killer is heart disease, and maybe you should diet and exercise, but they're not selling that, are they?
Or how about an antibiotic that doesn't develop resistance? No,
right. So you're right. And those medications, the biologics, are life-changing for people when you're at that, like, your life is so bad you don't want to live anymore, but there's big risks, and it's like taking chemo. I mean, because it does modulate your immune system.
It's not like taking chemo. It is chemo.
Well, I should have said that better. And so you're right. They have their place, But they show these people like, oh, I had really bad IBS and I have colitis and they're bouncing around and my life's great. But do they ever show what happens with the side effects on these things? Of the people that are miserable, we see them come in and they have these horrific infections.
But the worst, I think
their hair's falling out.
Yes.
They're having changes.
Fungal infections.
Oh, yeah.
Lethal and very unusual cancers in children.
Yeah.
The lower immune system.
Lymphoma, leukemia. I mean, it happens. But like we talked about right at the beginning, they blow past all of those really important things. They don't tell you the incidence of these horrific side effects, and you just lump it together with the pain at the injection site and blow it off.
But there's some stuff to kind of clarify. So there's biologics that are the anti-inflammatory biologics, the Humaras of the world, which are really kind of scary because the amount of screwing around you're doing with the immune system, which we don't really understand very well anyways. And then there's monoclonal antibodies, which are essentially just using yeast to manufacture drugs rather than manipulating molecules in a chemistry set to produce drugs.
Those are different.
So those are really they're sort of different. Like, so lots of stuff are monoclonal antibodies, but it's just a simpler way to produce. It's a more elegant way to produce a drug, which is fine. But those, now we're getting into peptides, right? Which is like Ozempic and Wegovy or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And when you start modulating, that's the whole point. You start modulating someone's immune system. What do you think's going to happen? So you're curing their plaque psoriasis, but you're causing all these other immune problems.
Like cancer.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And here's another thing. As long as you guys are so economically oriented, that the reason the large molecules, the biologics have been so successful for Wall Street is because of the lack of generic competition. The biosimilars are lagging way behind the small molecule generics. Okay, so they know that and then they do some fancy footwork. They change one little aspect, and now they have a new patent. Yes. So it's all about patents. It's all about Wall Street.
It's always been about patents. I remember when even the was it Prilosec or Propulsid? No, not Propulsid. Prilosec. Any of the GI meds from way back when, it was like, well, the patent's running out, so now we got to tweak it and find another indication specific so that we could get a new patent. That
was the biggest pile of horseshit ever invented. Was omeprazole to esomeprazole.
Yes.
So they took omeprazole, which was really quite an amazing drug, and they made it an enantiomer, and they doubled the dose.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
they could charge again, huh?
Yeah, so
they just made
they just inverted the molecule. They just made it in an enantiomer, and then
a lot of people don't know what an enantiomer is.
I do.
I know. I'm thinking our listeners are like, "What? What did he just say that word? Is he speaking?"
If the molecule looks like that, and you invert it to the mirror image, that's the enantiomer. Yes. So you flip it around. So they just flip the molecule around. And then they tried to say that Nexium works better than Prilosec, but they doubled the dose. The standard dose of Nexium was 40 milligrams from 20 milligrams. So it was absolute, complete BS, total garbage, to extend a patent.
I agree with you. No, it's unbelievable. And are you aware that little babies, I never had a baby, but babies spit up, right?
Oh,
do you know that they're giving those GERD medications for babies to spit up? Yes. I mean, what the hell?
Okay, I noticed that. So I've been practicing urgent care the last 13 years. I'm sort of retired from that now, but I noticed that in the last 4 years, maybe not in the 5.
What?
And people coming with these infants, and they're on GERD medications, and it's the new thing to help with spit up. I'm like, oh, why? Well, I guess it was causing respiratory problem. Okay, I get in the few kids that maybe have severe asthma and they're getting GERD or they're getting infections or bronchiolitis, but every kid that spits up now needs to be on a GERD medicine.
Let me ask you both something. Since medicine has changed so much in the last 10 to 20 years, do you still enjoy practicing?
No. And his answer would be
sometimes.
Okay.
The environment I'm in right now is very healthy from a and actually we're kind of at a stage where people are listening to the podcast and seeking me out. So
good.
So I'm getting some what we would call auto sort of selection. They're selecting based on, they know that I'm not going to bug them about the COVID vaccine. They know that I'm going to actually potentially listen and tell them that they don't need pills. So that part is, like
Tim's got a better ability than me to kind of
but
put a blockade up and just ignore some of the BS. And I'm kind of on this, like Robert Yoho, who says he's just so embarrassed by our profession and what we've done over the years. There's that. Plus, I really just got burnt out from big corporate, which is where we worked. And I even tried independent clinic, and I'm like, I still can't do it. I'm kind of done, and it's not fair to the patients. And I'm just done with the whole thing, because you can't get away, even small business, unless you just go cash pay. You can't get away from the metrics and what they demand of you. The insurance company demands you put all. I mean, I just want to write ear infection, bulging ear, amoxicillin, done. But you can't. You have to write a dissertation for every.
Right, and as you both pointed out earlier, a lot of people are leaving the profession. I get letters every day from practitioners who I work with. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm leaving the profession. Okay, all the time.
Yeah, well, if we can make this pay, we would just do this, because
so if you know any sponsors, Martha, if you know any big drug companies that want to sponsor us, like this show brought to you now by, I don't know, not that five.
No, but the one of the problems with the whole big pharma thing is we need it, right? It's literally like what Eisenhower said about the military-industrial complex. The whole point of the military-industrial complex speech wasn't that the military-industrial complex was bad inherently. It was that it was so easily corrupted, because we were going to be dependent for every war going forward.
Okay.
On having manufacturing that extended beyond the government, so we had to have it. So what happens, 2 seconds after he's out of office, Kennedy gets sworn in, and it's the military industrial complex speech. We've never not been in a war since then. So he was right. So when you have the pharma industrial complex,
that's what it is.
You are going to have chronic illness is the absolute fantasy dream of drug companies, because you get on 10 pills and you stay on them till you're dead.
That's exactly it. I so agree with you. And I've been reporting this 20 years, and we're on exactly the same page. I think it's so unethical to take public health and do that to it. It's like you said, the chronic disease is their cash cow. Their cash cow. It makes me sick to see not just the patients that are on all the pills, but how brainwashed they are. I have friends. A lot of my friends have been convinced they have these diseases, and it's not my place to say no. You've been brainwashed by TV, but people are very gullible. Okay, they eat that. When you go into a store, you look at all that stuff that's in the front. You don't want to eat that stuff.
It's frightening. You have to hunt hard now for good food in the grocery store. Honestly, when I go in there, I could check the perimeter, and even the perimeter is
if it has a face, I'll eat it.
But I tell you, Tim, you both asked me what else I'm working on, and I do have a strong opinion about this. The industrial farms use a lot of drugs on those animals, and they are the drugs that we wouldn't want them in us. Okay. Hormones, growth producers, antibiotics, heavy metals, heavy vaccines. And that I gave a lecture at Georgetown University a few months ago on this exact topic, because they're not on the label, okay? And I mean, don't you want to know if your pig had vaccines or if your cow had hormones or antibiotics? And that's a big issue to me.
Well, it's a huge issue to us, and
we've covered that a lot. And we actually, some of us, our biggest sponsors have been farms that get sustainable beef or basically meat from places that are hormone free, antibiotic free, free range.
And they're small farms,
small farm businesses. I would say the same about vegetables. That frightens me more.
Okay.
Because most of the things we get now come from Chile or Argentina, and I don't know where it came from, and it's harder to get produce that I can trust now almost than meat-based products and dairy and eggs, because where we live in rural Oregon, we have access to that. But the produce, unless it's summer and I'm going to the local market stand where my friend, brings her lettuce, I'm stuck.
Well, and I don't want to add to your fears, May, but I have to tell you, in my first book, I found a scientific article from an agricultural state, and they found that the lettuce, peas, and some other, I think it might have been cabbage, it pulled up the manure of the animals into its into the leaves. And so if that manure has antibiotics, well, there you are. So your parsley has antibiotics. It's the food, the animal pharma is just as scary as people pharma.
I think it's scarier. Yeah. You need to listen to our episodes with Dr. Sabine Hazen, who is probably now the world's foremost expert on the human microbiome.
Okay.
She owns a microbiome research company. She's hilarious, by the way, and she does tons of stool transplants. She's done and it's absolutely fascinating. And she is
researching.
Yeah, she is literally terrified that we are going to sterilize the microbiome of the entire world and kill every single mammal. Like, that's literally, like, she looks at this.
She's right. I mean, it's a threat. It's a threat. Now, tell me, you guys are so well educated. Tell me about H. pylori. Wasn't that Helicobacter pylori a good microbe to have, or am I wrong?
I don't.
I'm
want to
do
a show with Sabine on that one. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer, because when it all came out, it was like this overgrows, just like yeast would overgrow in your system, and then causes the untoward side effects, acid reflux and ulcers. And so it was all about taking antibiotics to reduce H. pylori and decrease it. I don't know that you definitely want stomach acid. People that are on all these antacids long term, that's not healthy for the gut microbiome. So I think the same could be, if you extrapolated, said to H. pylori as well. Just like you need yeast in your body, you need these bacteria in your gut. You don't want to kill them all off, because then there's an imbalance, and they do have a role. They're in there for a reason. We are made that way for a reason. So that will be interesting.
Your colleague is right that what we've done to the microbiome, it has a lot also to do with obesity.
Yes,
and we know that because when you take the fat rats microbe and you put it in the other, we know that. But a lot of this comes back down to eating good stuff.
Right.
Eating, it's like, it's just a shock to me how poorly people eat. They don't even read the labels.
It's frightening when you read. If I look at labels and I'm like, I can't pronounce it, and I have a lot of extended education in organic biochemistry. If I can't figure out what that is, then what the heck? Why are we eating this?
Glycophosphate. It really is.
So Martha, where can our listeners now go to read your articles, find you if they want to keep staying up on where you're at and what you're publishing or writing?
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for the plug. So I write, I contribute to Epoch Times. I also contribute to Children's Health Defense, the Fauci people.
Mm-hmm.
And I contribute to a really cool site that you need to check out. It's obscure, but it's a really cool site. It's in Australia, and it's called Newsblaze, NEWS Blaze, like Blazing Saddles. Okay. And there I contribute a lot. There's kind of my blog. I've been with them since 2006. So those are my three biggies.
Awesome.
And they're conservative sites, yeah. And but even there, you have to be a balanced journalist. I mean, just because I think your drug is killing people, it doesn't mean I'm not going to go to the manufacturer and say, how do you respond to that, criticism?
Yeah. Perfect.
But they can go to those three sites: Children's Health Defense, Epoch Times, and Newsblaze. Newsblaze is a great site.
So thank you so much for being here, joining us with Rick and partnering on his show, and just the discussion. And anytime you want to come back, let us know. We'd love to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited about some of the ideas that you guys gave me, because I didn't even think of some of these things. So this was very useful to me.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
But we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.